Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. We love to get our hands dirty with the best business and entrepreneurship books, and today we're really excited to be taking a close look at a book that's been making waves. It's called Breaking Free: How Business Owners Can Reclaim Control and Create the Life They Truly Want to Live by Greg Maddox.
Oh, I've heard great things about this one.
Yeah, this is one that really resonated with me, and I think it'll resonate with a lot of our listeners too, because it's all about that feeling that I think so many of us have felt. You work so hard to build your business and you're successful on paper, but somehow you still feel trapped. You're not experiencing that freedom that you thought would come with being your own boss.
Yeah, it's like the classic entrepreneurial dilemma, right?
Enough. Yeah.
You trade the golden handcuffs of a 9 to 5 for the iron shackles of your own company.
Uh-huh. Exactly.
Right.
So Maddox dives deep into this, and he talks about these three key areas of freedom that I think are so important for every business owner and really for anyone who wants to live a fulfilling life. And those are business freedom, financial freedom, and personal freedom.
Okay, so the trifecta of freedom, and I'm guessing these three are interconnected, right?
Oh, absolutely. They're totally intertwined.
Mm.
It's almost like this vicious cycle.
Yeah.
You lack freedom in one area and it starts to impact the others. So you end up feeling stuck in this loop where you're not making any real progress towards that ultimate goal of living a truly free life.
Okay, so it's like you're on this treadmill, you're running and running, but you're not actually going anywhere.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of this story that Maddox tells in the book about this marketing agency owner who was working like 14-hour days, but she wasn't seeing the growth she'd hoped for. And she was feeling so burned out and resentful.
Oh, I can totally relate to that feeling. Like you're putting in all this effort, but you're not getting the results you want. And then you start to question everything.
Yeah, exactly. And so she goes to this business coach, and he asks her this really simple question. He says, are you busy or are you productive? And that really stops her in her tracks because she realizes that she's been confusing activity with productivity.
I think we've all been there at some point. Like just because you're checking things off your to-do list doesn't mean you're actually moving closer to your goals.
Exactly. And so Maddox really emphasizes this difference between activity and productivity. And he says that a lot of entrepreneurs fall into this trap. They think that just because they're constantly doing things, they're being productive.
Yeah.
But the reality is that a lot of those actions are just busy work. They're not actually moving the needle.
So it's like that old saying about working smarter, not harder.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Maddox lays out a few key strategies for making that shift from activity to productivity.
Like what? Give us the goods.
Okay, so first and foremost, he talks about the importance of setting crystal clear goals. And I mean really specific, measurable goals. Not just these vague aspirations like, I want to grow my business or I want to be more successful. You have to get really granular with it.
So it's like setting smart goals, specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound.
Exactly. And then once you have those clear goals in place, you can start to prioritize your tasks based on their impact, not just their urgency.
Okay, so it's about asking yourself, will doing this task actually move me closer to my goals, or is it just keeping me busy?
Right. It's about being really intentional with your time and energy.
Yeah.
And he also talks about the importance of delegating effectively. A lot of entrepreneurs try to do everything themselves, and they end up being the bottleneck in their own business.
I see this all the time. They have trouble letting go of control. They think they're the only ones who can do things the right way.
Right. But the reality is that if you want to achieve true freedom, you have to be willing to delegate. And that means trusting your team and empowering them to make decisions.
Yeah, you have to get comfortable with not being in control of every little detail.
And he's also a big proponent of systems and processes.
Systems? Ooh, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
So he talks about the importance of creating systems for everything from your marketing to your client onboarding to your financial management.
So basically, anything that you do repeatedly in your business can and should be systematized.
Exactly. It's about creating a business that runs smoothly even when you're not there to micromanage everything.
Okay, so this is where the exit ready part comes in. Even if you're not planning to sell your business anytime soon, building systems and processes like this can give you so much more freedom and flexibility.
Exactly. It's about creating a business that works for you, not the other way around.
And it's about working smarter, not harder.
Right. And that's what it all comes down to. It's about shifting your mindset from doing more to doing the right things. It reminds me of that famous Peter Drucker quote, efficiency is doing things right. Effectiveness is doing the right things. And that's really what Maddox is advocating for. Now, one of the concepts that really stood out to me in the book was the become, be, do principle.
Become, be, do. I've never heard of that one. What's that all about?
So most entrepreneurs get caught in what he calls the do-have-be trap. They believe that if they just do enough, they'll eventually have what they want and then they'll be happy and successful. But Maddox flips that on its head.
Okay, so instead of starting with what you need to do, you start with who you need to become.
Exactly. It's like this mental makeover for your entrepreneurial self.
Yeah.
You have to first envision the ideal version of yourself, the business owner who embodies the freedoms you desire.
So you think about what qualities, skills, and mindsets does that person possess? What does their daily life look like? And then you start being that person.
Exactly. You start making choices that align with that identity.
Mm.
And then the actions, the doing, will naturally flow from that shift.
It's like you're creating a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, exactly. And Maddox shares some really compelling examples of how this principle plays out in the real world. Like there's this story about Tom, a construction business owner who was working himself to the bone. He hadn't taken a vacation in years, and he felt completely trapped by his business.
Oh man, I've met so many Toms in my day. They're those classic workaholic entrepreneurs who are so dedicated to their businesses, but they're sacrificing their own well-being in the process.
Yeah, exactly. And so Tom really wanted to achieve business freedom, but he was stuck in that do-do-do mentality, constantly putting out fires and neglecting the bigger picture. So we helped him apply the become, be, do principle.
So he had to envision himself as the kind of leader who could build a self-sustaining business, one that didn't require his constant presence.
Exactly. He had to become someone who trusted his team, delegated effectively, and focused on strategy rather than micromanaging every detail.
And then as he started being that leader, the actions followed.
Right. He implemented project management software to streamline communication. He empowered his site managers to handle client interactions. And he even started developing a leadership team to share the decision-making burden.
Wow, so he was essentially building himself out of a job.
Well, not out of a job, but out of the day-to-day grind,
Yeah.
and it worked.
Mhm.
Within 6 months, he was working 40-hour weeks, and he'd finally taken a 2-week vacation, his first in a decade.
That's amazing. What a transformation. And more importantly, he transformed his identity as a business owner.
Right? He was no longer just doing things. He was being the kind of leader who naturally created business freedom.
That's a powerful story. I love how it shows that you don't have to sacrifice your life to be a successful entrepreneur. You can have both.
Exactly. And that's what this book is all about. It's about reclaiming control, creating the life you want, and breaking free from those self-imposed limitations.
Speaking of breaking free, Maddox also talks about this tool he developed called the Exit Ready Freedom Score.
Oh, yeah, I wanted to ask you about that.
Uh-huh.
That's the deal with that. What is the Exit Ready Freedom Score, and how does it work?
It's essentially a self-assessment tool that helps you gauge your current level of freedom across those three key areas: business, financial, and personal. You can access it through a QR code in the book, and it only takes about 5 to 10 minutes to complete.
So it's like a personalized snapshot of your freedom landscape.
Exactly. And it provides you with individual scores for each freedom area, along with personalized recommendations for improvement.
So it's not just about identifying your weaknesses, but also about highlighting your strengths.
Right. It helps you see where you're already doing well and where you might need to focus your efforts.
I like that. It's a holistic approach.
Hmm.
It's not just about fixing what's broken, but also about leveraging your strengths.
Precisely. And Maddox shares some interesting case studies in the book of how different business owners have used the assessment to make positive changes in their lives.
Like, for example.
Okay, so there's this guy named Mark who owns a software company. He took the assessment and was really surprised by his results. His business was profitable, but he scored incredibly low in business and personal freedom.
Oh, wow. Why was that?
Well, his business was entirely dependent on him. He had no systems in place, he was involved in every single decision, and he was working like 70+ hours a week.
So he was basically a slave to his own business.
Pretty much. And it was clearly taking a toll on his personal life as well. He was constantly stressed, he was missing out on family time, and he hadn't taken a real vacation in years.
So even though he's financially successful, he was lacking freedom in those other two key areas.
Exactly. And the assessment was a wake-up call for him. It helped him realize that financial success alone wouldn't bring him true freedom if he was still chained to his business 24/7.
Makes sense. So what did he do? How did he use the assessment results to make changes?
Well, the assessment gave him specific recommendations tailored to his situation. It suggested that he focus on building systems and processes, streamlining operations, delegating more effectively, and developing a leadership team to share the decision-making burden.
So he was basically working towards building an exit-ready business even if he wasn't planning to sell anytime soon.
Exactly. And that's one of the key takeaways from Maddox's book. Even if you're not planning to exit your business in the near future, adopting an exit-ready mindset can be incredibly liberating.
Because it forces you to think about systems, processes, and leadership development in a whole new way.
Right. It encourages you to build a business that can thrive even without your constant presence.
So even if you're years away from selling or stepping back, that exit-ready mindset can be a powerful tool for creating more freedom in the present moment.
Absolutely. It's about building a business that truly works for you, not the other way around.
Now, for our listeners who are feeling that tug of entrepreneurial freedom, where should they start? What's one actionable step they can take today to move in the right direction?
Well, it all starts with awareness.
Hmm.
Taking a moment to really reflect on those three core freedoms we've been talking about: business, financial, and personal. Which one feels the most constricted right now? Where are you feeling the most stuck? And don't be afraid to get really specific about it. Like, what does freedom actually look like for you in each of those areas?
Yeah, I think that's such a great point because we often have these vague ideas about what freedom means, but we don't really take the time to define it for ourselves.
Right. Like, is it the ability to take a month-long vacation without worrying about your business falling apart? Or is it having the financial security to pursue a passion project without stressing about the bottom line? Or maybe it's just having the time and energy to be fully present with your family and friends after a long day of work.
It's different for everyone. And I think once you have a clear vision of what freedom means to you, you can start to make choices that align with that vision.
Exactly. And remember, it's not just about making big sweeping changes. You can start with small, incremental steps.
Like maybe it's delegating one task that's been weighing you down or finally blocking out some time in your calendar for that hobby you've been neglecting.
Exactly. Or maybe it's just taking 5 minutes each day to visualize yourself living that free life you desire. Whatever it takes to start shifting your mindset and moving in the right direction.
I love that. And it reminds me of that quote, "The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step."
It's so true. And even small steps can add up to big results over time.
Now, I know we've talked a lot about these high-level concepts, but let's get down to brass tacks. What are some practical tips that our listeners can implement today to start creating more freedom in their businesses and lives?
Okay, well, first of all, remember that shift from an activity-focused mindset to a results-oriented one that we talked about earlier.
Right. It's about focusing on those key performance indicators, those KPIs that actually measure progress toward your goals.
Exactly. And then once you've identified those KPIs, you can start to prioritize your tasks based on their impact, not just their urgency.
And don't forget about the power of delegation.
Oh, yes. Delegation is key. So many entrepreneurs try to do everything themselves, and they end up being the bottleneck in their own business.
I see this all the time. And it's like they're afraid to let go of control.
Right. But the reality is that if you want to achieve true freedom, you have to be willing to delegate.
And that means trusting your team and empowering them to make decisions.
Exactly. You have to get comfortable with not being in control of every little detail. And remember those systems we talked about earlier?
Yes, systems can be such a game changer for streamlining operations and reducing that feeling of constant firefighting.
They absolutely can. And you don't have to create these elaborate, complicated systems. You can start with something simple. Well, like maybe you create a standard operating procedure for onboarding new clients, or you set up a project management system to keep track of all your tasks.
Anything that can help you automate or streamline those repetitive tasks that are sucking up your time and energy.
Exactly. And then once you have those systems in place, you can start to scale your business without scaling your workload.
Which ultimately gives you more freedom and flexibility.
Precisely. Now remember that the become be do principle can also be a really powerful tool for creating more freedom.
Yeah, we talked about that earlier,
Yeah.
but it's worth repeating because I think it's such a profound concept.
It really is. Instead of getting caught in that do have be trap, you start by envisioning the kind of business owner you need to become to achieve those freedoms.
So you're not just focusing on what you need to do, but also on who you need to be.
Exactly. And remember, Tom, the construction business owner we discussed earlier.
Yeah, the guy who finally took a vacation after a decade.
That's the one. So he wanted business freedom. So he had to become the kind of leader who could build a self-sustaining business.
Right, he had to shift his identity from a doer to a leader.
Exactly. And then as he started embodying those qualities of a true leader, the actions naturally followed.
He started delegating more effectively, empowering his team, and focusing on the big picture.
Right. And as a result, he was able to create more freedom for himself, both in his business and his personal life.
And I think that's a great reminder for all of us that we're not stuck with the identities we have. We can choose to become someone different, someone who is more aligned with the life we want to create.
Absolutely. And the Exit Ready Freedom Score can be a really valuable tool for helping you identify those areas where you might need to make some changes.
Yeah, it's like a diagnostic tool that can help you pinpoint those bottlenecks that are preventing you from achieving true freedom.
Exactly. And then once you know where you need to focus your efforts, you can start implementing those strategies we've been talking about.
And I'm curious, when you work with business owners who are struggling with freedom, what's the most common piece of advice you find yourself giving?
Hmm, that's a good question. I think it often comes down to helping them shift their perspective. A lot of entrepreneurs get so caught up in the day-to-day grind that they lose sight of the bigger picture. They forget why they started their businesses in the first place.
So it's about reconnecting with that initial spark, that vision of freedom that drove them to become entrepreneurs in the first place.
Exactly. I encourage them to really think about what they want their life to look like and to start making choices that are aligned with that vision.
Because when you're clear on your why, the how becomes much easier to figure out.
Precisely. It's like having a compass that guides you in the right direction.
And I think it's also important to remember that freedom is not a destination. It's a journey.
Oh, absolutely. There's no magic formula or quick fix. It's about making those small incremental changes day after day and staying committed to your vision.
And it's about celebrating those small wins along the way, acknowledging your progress and giving yourself credit for the effort you're putting in.
That's so important because it's easy to get discouraged when you're feeling stuck. But if you can focus on the positive and celebrate your wins, it can really help you stay motivated and keep moving forward.
And it's also about remembering that you don't have to do it alone. There are resources, mentors, and communities out there ready to support you on this journey.
Exactly. Don't be afraid to ask for help, whether it's from a business coach, a mentor, a friend or family member, or even just joining a supportive community of like-minded entrepreneurs.
I love that.
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes we feel like we have to do it all ourselves.
Hmm.
But the truth is that we're all in this together.
We are. And there's so much power in collaboration and community.
Now, I know we're wrapping up this part of our deep dive. But before we move on, I wanted to circle back to that thought-provoking question you posed earlier. What one small step can our listener take today to move closer to the freedom they desire in their business?
Let's see. It could be anything, really.
Like, what are some concrete examples?
Okay, well, how about this? It could be as simple as blocking out 30 minutes in your calendar to reflect on your vision of freedom.
Or maybe it's delegating one task that's been weighing you down.
Or finally scheduling that vacation you've been putting off.
Or perhaps it's picking up a copy of Greg Maddox's Breaking Free and diving deeper into those strategies we've been discussing today.
The important thing is to start somewhere. Even a small step can create momentum and set you on the path towards a more fulfilling and freeing entrepreneurial journey.
Well said. Now let's move on to the final part of our deep dive, where we'll explore some even more actionable strategies for achieving entrepreneurial freedom. All right, so let's dive into some more of those actionable strategies. Now, I know we've been talking a lot about the Exit Ready Freedom Score, but I wanted to make sure our listeners really understand how to use this tool. It's more than just a theoretical exercise, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's definitely not just some academic concept. The real power of the assessment lies in those actionable insights that it gives you. It helps you pinpoint those specific areas where you might be feeling stuck, and it offers tailored recommendations for improvement.
It's like having a personalized roadmap for achieving greater freedom in your business and your life.
Exactly. And it's not a one-time thing either. You can retake the assessment periodically to track your progress and identify new areas for growth. It's like a regular checkup for your entrepreneurial freedom.
I love that analogy. So for our listeners who are ready to take that first step, where can they find the Exit Ready Freedom Score?
Well, you can find the assessment through a QR code in Greg Maddox's book, Breaking Free, or by visiting his website, which we'll link to in the show notes.
Perfect. Now, I'm curious, when you work with business owners who are struggling with freedom, what's that one piece of advice that you find yourself giving the most?
I think it often comes down to helping them shift their perspective. So many entrepreneurs get so caught up in the day-to-day grind that they lose sight of the bigger picture. They kind of forget why they even started their businesses in the first place.
So it's about reconnecting with that initial spark, that vision of freedom that drove them to become entrepreneurs.
Exactly. I always encourage them to revisit their why, to remember those dreams and aspirations that fueled their entrepreneurial journey.
Because when you're clear on your why, the how becomes much easier to figure out.
Precisely. It gives you that compass, that guiding principle for making decisions and prioritizing actions. It reminds you that building a business isn't just about financial success, but it's about creating a life of meaning, purpose, and yes, freedom.
Okay, so we're wrapping up, but I wanted to touch on one final point. Maddox talks about this idea of becoming exit ready, even if you're not planning to sell your business anytime soon. Why is that so important?
I think it's a really brilliant strategy for creating a more sustainable and ultimately a more valuable business. It forces you to think about your business as an asset, something that can thrive independently of you being there to manage everything.
It's like creating a legacy, a system that can outlast your direct involvement.
Right. And it really pushes you to think differently about every aspect of your business, from systems and processes to leadership development to team building. It's about creating a business that can run without you.
So even if you're years away from an actual exit thinking, like an exit-ready business owner, can be a powerful way to create more freedom in the present moment.
Absolutely. Because it's all about building a business that gives you the freedom to choose how you want to spend your time and energy, whether that's pursuing other passions, spending more time with your family, or just enjoying the fruits of your labor. It's about having the choice.
I think that's a fantastic point. So as we wrap up this deep dive into Greg Maddox's Breaking Free, I think the key takeaway here is that freedom is not something that you just find, it's something you create.
I couldn't agree more. It's a conscious choice, a commitment to building a business and a life that truly serves you.
So to all of our listeners out there, we encourage you to take that first step, no matter how small it is. Start envisioning your ideal version of freedom, and then start making choices that align with that vision. You've got this.
And remember, you don't have to do it alone. There are resources, mentors, and communities out there ready to support you on this journey.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into entrepreneurial freedom. We hope you found it insightful, inspiring, and most importantly, empowering. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep striving for that freedom you deserve.
See you next time.